You know, Rebels, if you've been checking out some of my promotional ads on social media, you will be aware that I have been using a lot of AI programs to help me create ads. But you know what? There's a lot more uses for AI than just funny little videos. And I'd like to introduce one of our new sponsors, Podium. It is a leader in creating AI tools for podcasters. Now, let's say you've got a podcast, or maybe you're even thinking of doing a podcast. You're probably wondering, well, how can AI be integrated with your workflow? I'll tell you about Podium. As a podcaster, you know that writing show notes and creating chapters and transcribing episodes takes a lot of time, and it can cost you a lot of money too. But you know what? That's where Podium comes in. It's an AI tool designed specifically for creators and podcasters with the goal of making post-production tasks quick and easy. And in just a few minutes, Podium generates show notes, chapters, summaries, clips for social media, a full transcript, suggested episode titles, social media posts, and more. Whew, that's a lot of work for one little program. Your show notes are key to your podcast's success because it helps new listeners find your podcast and they'll know if it's a fit for them. You know, kind of like Too Many Podcasts. It also improves your SEO, that's your search engine optimization. Ooh, big phrase there. And overall accessibility. And with Podium, you can focus on creating a great podcast and let Podium's AI do the heavy lifting. But Podium isn't just for solo creators and podcasters. It's a game changer for editors, producers, marketers, agencies, and production studios. Teams that use Podiums are able to increase workloads, decrease turnaround times, and improve their quality. How does it work? Very easy. First, go to Podium's website, and you'll see that link that's right there in the show notes. You get 3 hours free just to try it. Pretty cool, huh? And using that link also supports this show as well. And you know what else happens? Because I'm a good guy. You use my link, you will get 50% off for your first month. So visit the site, upload an MP3 file, and download your files, and that's it. And if you need anything else, you can use Podium GPT to generate articles and any marketing copy you might need in seconds. Instant show notes, transcripts, chapters for your podcast or channel. This will level up that podcast. So check out Podium today.
The Sherpa Screening Room is a presentation of Too Many Podcasts, which is brought to you in cooperation with the SJ Network. If you're someone who'd like to appear on podcasts, contact Stephen Joyner at s-j-network.com. This show is hosted by Jim the Podcast Sherpa. With a name like that, you can't say I didn't warn you.
This week, Marc Barron is our guest on the Sherpa Screening Room. Marc has performed in theater and movies and also as a writer, director, and producer. He's also been a stand-in for several actors as well. Interestingly enough, not many people know that the Sherpa has been a body double. Who knew that he was that good in impersonating singer Peter Lemongello? Oh, sorry, correction. He imitated a big pile of jello.
Coming to you from Sherpa Chalet in beautiful downtown Mount Podcastia, it's time for entertainment interviews in the Sherpa Screening Room. Grab an aisle seat and a bucket of popcorn, but don't crunch too loud or you'll miss the show. Now, here's your host, Jim, the Podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, Rebels of the Sherpa-lution, and welcome to the Sherpa Screening Room. It is a presentation of Too Many Podcasts, and it's where we get to focus and meet new creators of film, music, TV, and anything else in between. And if you be my bodyguard, I can be your long-lost pal. I can call you Betty. And Betty, when you call me, you can call me Jim, the Podcast Sherpa, coming to you here from Sherpa-lu Studios in the Sherpa Chalet, high atop Mount Podcastia. And welcome to another episode. This is episode 25 of season 12, believe it or not. And we've got a good one. You know, over the years, I've gotten to talk to singers, dancers, actors, writers, directors, and producers. And today, I get to speak to a guy who's done a little bit of all of that. His name is Marc Barron. He's coming to us from Manhattan, the city that never sleeps, but I do. And we got to hear some of the stories from his life and his position in SAG-AFTRA, that is the Actors Union, and all of the other things that he's done in between. Super nice guy. Here's an interview that I think you're going to enjoy. So without further ado, we proceed into the Sherpa Screening Room, and we get to talk to Mr. Marc Barron. Hello there, Rebels. We are here in the Sherpa screening room. My guest today, I don't know what he hasn't done yet. He's been a singer, an actor, a dancer, a writer, a director, a producer. Have you done catering? We're going to find out if he's done catering. His name is Marc Barron, coming to us.
I cooked in a restaurant in the high school.
Okay, there you go. I think that's close enough. Mr. Marc Barron, nice to meet you, sir. You've actually had real creators back to your grandparents, really.
And my mother she was a dancer when she was very young. She grew up in Vienna and escaped with my grandparents in September of 1939, came to New York. Mm-hmm. And when I told her that after all the years that I've been in grade school, high school, of all the music and theater, that's what I wanted to do. And her response was, well, it's in your DNA. And it wasn't until years later that I really learned how much DNA it's in me, because I've been doing research on my grandfather, who was a respected sculptor from Vienna during that golden period of the early half of the 1910 until 1939. And when I started doing research, found amazing people in the family tree, artists, musicians, composers, the list goes on and on.
Your grandmother was related to Gustav Mahler, the composer?
My grandmother was a concert pianist from Vienna. Mm-hmm. And when we did the family tree, it turns out she was related in one direction through marriage to Gustav Mahler, and in another direction related to Alma Schindler, who became Alma Mahler. So in multiple directions.
Oh, wow. And when you said when your mom was a dancer, she actually worked with the actress Hedy Lamarr?
My mother, no, she didn't work together. They were classmates.
They were classmates. Okay.
Yeah. The story she always told us that she was supposed to audition for the film Ecstasy. Mm-hmm. And when my grandfather read the script, he said no because of the nude scenes. And my mother used to always get angry with him because he was a sculptor. A lot of his artistic were nudes, and was often a model. And his answer was, "But that's not art."
And when you got started, you were actually trained by Gene Kelly's brother.
Well, I started much sooner than that. I all the way back in second grade, I was in the chorus and theater there. In high school, I was in the band and eventually even ran the theater group in high school. I went to high school with Walter Matthau's nephew, Dana, who's still out there somewhere. And when I went to college, looking at local colleges, I looked here in Manhattan at Pace University, and then it turned out the head of the drama department lived right across the street from my high school.
Wow.
On Long Island. And so he knew all my work. And so I got accepted without even requesting my grades.
Wow.
And I did a year there. Then I went into the Navy to help pay for school. And then when I came back from the Navy back to the same college, Pace, that's where I got to meet Gene Kelly's brother, who was one of the teachers. And we became good friends, and we were friends until he passed away.
Mm-hmm. I see. And you also got into the movies as well. This is where your writing was encouraged by of all people, Dustin Hoffman and Matthew Broderick, which are pretty high up on the ladder there.
I had been focused on musical theater, and I was married at the time. I married too young, the wrong person. I'm sure she says the same about me. And I had a few offers for some musical work that would have taken me out of town, which she did not want me to do. And so, trying to be the good husband, I looked for my options and did a little bit of extra work. Didn't like that, and found out what a stand-in was. And I said, well, if I got to do grunt work, I might as well do that, because you're right with the director, everybody. And I started doing that. And I was good at it because not only did I get along with people and I paid attention, but I had studied directing in college as well as part of my theater program. And on one of the ones that I got into was, can't believe how long ago, but it was, on paper it was funny, but the film wasn't. But I referred to it as my master class. I come in for an audition, really an interview, to see if I would be matched up to be the double for Matthew Broderick. And as I come into the space, there's Dustin Hoffman and Sean Connery rehearsing. And I wound up getting the job simply because I joked with Matthew Broderick, where the other guy was gee, Mr. Broderick, I like your work. And we had a blast. We had a fun time. Matthew was a sweet guy. We still run into each other. I just bumped into him, I don't know, about last week sometime. He did a talk for the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. But yeah, on that, I was doing something I did back in high school was I wrote A Night Before Christmas, but catered it for the project. So it began with A Night Before Christmas all through the set. No one was stirring, not even Lumet. Sidney Lumet was the director.
Okay.
And I was off in the corner working on it. One day, Matthew sees me. He comes over. He goes, "What are you doing?" And he grabs it. He starts reading it. He goes, "I'll be right back." And he disappeared. And I'm like, "It's not done." He comes back a few minutes later with Dustin Hoffman. And Dustin goes, "You wrote this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And for the rest of filming, both of them, they kept saying, you have to learn to start writing and putting your own pictures together. You just, that's how you're going to get noticed. And that's what planted the seed all those years ago.
And then you even got further involved with directing as well.
Well, I've always been in theater to a degree, nothing major, little things. I was eventually brought into an organization called The Lambs, it's a social club, but it's a professional theatrical organization that started in 1874. In fact, Fred Kelly, Gene's brother, brought me into that. And so I was quickly working there. I was performing, often directing projects there. I became friendly with one of the members who was a playwright. Ultimately, I directed 4 of his plays. One it was a musical that got up to the York Theater for a program on development. But typical of that writer, he's like, "No, that's all I want to do with it." And he passed away a few years ago. But one of the films I'm directing was inspired by a play that he wrote that I had asked him in the late 90s, could I adapt this to a screenplay? And he said yes, but he didn't like making many changes to his work. And so it got put off until during COVID. It got pulled back up, and now it's my version that the playwright approved has been optioned to shoot in Vienna with me directing it.
And this actually has to do with your grandfather, right? The story itself?
Oh, no, the story was not based on my grandfather, but when I was doing the major rewrites, I like doing little Easter eggs, little hidden things. Mm-hmm. So when I had to flesh out the characters, I started giving the lead character my family history.
Okay.
And now when people read it, they really like it because it has a personal side, especially when the people in Austria read it.
And so we'll just have to wait a little bit until I know we're going to get the movie funded, and then we can do. And I know there was another movie that you were also working on as well.
I've got my partner and I. We had between us our development company, if you will. We have about 25 screenplays. But over the years, I've gotten better, and sometimes I go back and look at one screenplay and I go, "Nah, that's not working now." And neither do I want to rework it or just put it away. But we have a slasher type of film, a screenplay that we just assume sell. But another film that I wrote during basically got an idea on the subway. It's a comedy. It's about computer geeks, the lottery, and the mob.
Okay.
And it's called Mega Balls.
Okay.
Which gets the title from combining Mega Millions and Powerball. And we've been pitching that. We went to Toronto with it. We went to Sundance. And everybody gets right away. They get it's a comedy. We've done very well with the pitches. Again, we just haven't made that right connection to get into the financing. It's tough financing a movie. I don't think some people understand. Some people have all the luck. And like, I just watched the movie last night. I went, how? But it's the people with the money want to know who the actors are. And the actors don't really want to read it till you have the money.
That's true. I've actually been fortunate enough to interview a few other people who've produced movies, even mostly for independent stuff, and they've all said the same thing. They said being the producer is the hardest thing because you're in charge of the whole Megillah, and you're the one who's got to fill up the wallet to make sure that everything runs smoothly.
Yeah, and there's legal work involved, and you just keep spending money, and then you don't see anything happening. The Vienna project, I have a producer in Vienna who is doing that. So I'm working with him. I'm really the director writer, but I'm contributing where I can as far as producing. But it's, and then the other thing too, the way you pull a film together is by getting distribution deals. But then it becomes the distributors want to know who are the actors,
right?
The people with money want to. It's like I call it the Bermuda Triangle of filmmaking. You know, you need the actors, the distribution, and the money to all line up at the same time, and it never happens.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of the actors that I get to talk to say a lot of the same thing, that the movie theaters are filled with superhero movies, kid movies, and sequels, and not too much beyond that. And it's sad because there's a lot of great independent film masterpieces that are out there that don't get seen by the masses.
There still are some theaters that are not dealing with the Hollywood product. Like in Malvern, you have a theater that runs independent film. There's several here in New York City. They're around, you know, but you got to have a finished film before you can even go to them.
Right.
It's a shame because there's so many good stories. I know so many good writers and there's so many good stories, but the Hollywood, if you will, as an industry is always looking for a surefire hit. So they want the sequel, the prequel, the remake, you know, that kind of thing. And sometimes they hit and sometimes they miss. I mean, I see some films that have lost so much money, I could have produced the rest of my life on what they lost in one picture.
Now,
I think is in not opening to meet new people. Like, for example, we've been looking into it. Netflix actually has a statement that says you cannot pitch to them until they've already worked with you.
And like, if you want experience, you have to have the job first.
Right. I mean, we get that now. I mean, even though I've written this, I've worked with some top directors. I know what I'm doing. I've learned on this set, but they go, well, you haven't directed. It's like, well, how do you get to direct if you haven't directed? Somewhere you got to have that first one. And should I go waste thousands of dollars to do a short film that nobody will see just to say, look, I directed?
Right.
And it doesn't mean I can make a feature and be good at what I do.
That is true. Now, from what I understand in your bio, you said that your business partner was in The Godfather?
Yep, my business partner's older. He was actually a New York City policeman, and there was some scandal he was involved with that he did no wrong, and as a result, he was given, he was in a day of the beat cops. Mm-hmm. He was given the area around the Museum of Natural History. And right there on the corner is a apartment, the Beresford, which is where Mike Nichols lived and worked. And so he got to know Mike because Joe's an outgoing guy and he was the local cop. And Mike used to say, hey, if you want coffee, come up and rest. And one day he was up there when Nichols said, you know, I know somebody's looking for people just like you. Here, give this guy a call. Winds up getting a part in The Godfather. And he's to the whole party scene. I see him, but his shots, his dialogue is all cut.
Oh.
But he got his union card. And to this day, 45 years later, he's still getting residual checks. But then he decided he did his time as a cop. He retired. And then he started doing private security for film sets and for celebrities. And in fact, about 2 years ago, he released his self-published autobiography, his memoirs. And some of the people he worked with Sinatra, he worked with Tom Hanks as private security. Mm-hmm. And he started writing, and he and I actually met on a film set years ago. He was playing a cop. I was playing a cop. And we were the only two out of like 40 that knew how to handle a gun. We just started chatting and we became friends. And then we finally decided years later, let's put a business together, a development company.
Wow, that's really cool. Now, you've actually been a member of SAG-AFTRA for a number of years, right?
Yeah, I've been a member of the union since 1979.
Okay.
But I've been now on the New York board of SAG-AFTRA for, I'm ending my 17th or 18th year, I forget. Mm-hmm. In fact, we just had a board meeting last night.
And what are some of the things that you get to do on that board? Can you don't have to go into specifics, but the general.
We mainly have meetings. Like last night, we had meetings, and we get reports about what the union as a whole is doing regarding, tax deals they're pushing or things in Washington they're working on. On the national level, we discuss, say, the operating budget, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a variety of things. Last year, as you know, we had the big strike.
Right. So
I was a strike captain down on 19th Street. And so my job there was to keep the strike, everybody energized. And the few of us that were board members, we also were the ones who kind of looked out for the high profile people because we were getting a lot coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by looked out for them, we tried to keep most of the paparazzi there was pretty good. But there were a lot of autograph hunters and selfie people and things like that.
Right.
So we kind of looked out for them to let them know we want you to be here and comfortable. We're going to be the block for you.
Okay.
Like one day Lucy Liu was there, and there was one of the paparazzi was really being annoying, and she was getting very upset. So I gathered a picket sign and walked next to her with the sign in front of her face all the time, so the guy couldn't get her photograph.
I love it.
Yeah. Some good stories. I got to know a bunch of people really well, some really nice people like F. Murray Abraham, 84 years old, and he was out there every day, rain or shine, picketing.
Wow. You definitely get to know people in a new light when you get to hold a picket sign in front of their face, I'm sure.
No, Murray was great. He had my email, so one day he got mad and we had a pouring rain and we left, and he sent me an email. Why didn't you tell me? You were coming. Like one day we had to go on both sides of the building. So the one of the higher people in the union said they needed me to send a few people around the back to cover the back entrance. So as I said, Murray was passing by. I said, Murray, we need you around the back. So he went back, and then he was calling the cadence, what do we want? Voiceovers.
I love it. This is great. You said that you were a stand-in. How do you get involved doing movies as a stand-in? Did you do a lot of stand-in work?
I did a lot. First of all, it's a union job, to be within a union set. And the main requirement is you're about the height, weight, and hair color of the actor.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of people who don't want to do stand-in work because if you do it right, it can be a lot of work.
Okay.
And that's what I liked. I didn't want to be sitting and holding all the time doing extra work or begging for a line once in a while. I said, look, I want to learn the business. I want to get to know people. So I want to be in the heart of it. And even though as an actor, I've had many agency casting people tell me, oh, you're only taller. And then when I was doing stand-in work, it's like I was just so busy. It's like, so how can I be not tall enough if I'm matching all these stars?
Can you name a few people that you've done stand-in work for?
I mentioned Matthew Broderick, Austin Pendleton.
Okay.
He's a sweet guy. John Pankow.
Okay.
I did 4 movies with him.
Read about you, right? He was the cousin, right?
Cousin Ira.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked with him. I did 2 films with Matthew Broderick. I did one with Sean Penn, Woody Allen film. It's for the most part, everybody was really good on the set. I really have nothing bad to say about any of the stars, because you're not only spending your time with the guy you're doubling for, you're really spending most of your time with the director and the cinematographer.
Right.
And so you have some great people. I mean, I spent Sidney Lumet. I mean, I bow to him, as probably one of the more brilliant American directors of the later century. But by the 3rd day, he would turn and explain shots to me, and I didn't know why, but I was loving it. And then I found much later that he was writing a book called Making Movies.
Okay.
And it was kind of a sounding board. And when I bought the book, it's like, yeah, we talked about that. I remember that. So it's a really interesting way to learn your craft. And what used to happen a lot was when you were good at stand-in, they would somewhere throw you a line, what we would call a day player.
Okay.
And then the idea is if you would, pack up a bunch of these day players, suddenly now you had something that an agent could use to market you and move up into the next level. And when I got involved, that process was like just starting to stop.
Okay.
So it happened a few times, but it's hard to keep that momentum because it wasn't happening as much. And I was good at what I did, and so I would getting lots of work. And then one day you realize, well, as long as I'm willing to do this work, that's all they're going to give me.
Now, if people want to find out more about the projects that you're working on, I know you've got a couple of websites that you can share. So if people want to definitely look into some information, could you let everybody know what those are?
Yeah, well, behind me you can see Vienna. That film is called Comeback in Vienna. Mm-hmm. And that's the website, comebackinvienna.com. The mob comedy I told you about, that's called Megaballs. And that website is megabalsmovie.com. And then our development group is called Oro Loro, OROLORO.
Okay.
Which is bad Spanish for a golden parrot. And it's also a palindrome. When you read it, it reads the same forward and backwards.
Right.
Those are the three websites.
Okay.
And I'm on all social media as well.
Sure. Is there any upcoming projects that you're really excited about beyond the two movies? Or those are the big priorities right now?
Those are the priorities. I mean, I've got two ideas I've been fleshing out a little bit, new scripts. One is a feature, lower budget that we could shoot in Vienna. And it's a kind of a mix of stories that take place inside an old antique bookshop. And the other one's a short, but I don't know how much I want to develop that. I've got about 5 or 6 short scripts. But the focus is on the two main films, making the contacts. We've got, for example, Comeback in Vienna is out to 2 females that if they say yes, we could finance.
Okay.
It's just really hard to get anybody to read it. There have been a lot of lawsuits over the years. I get it. I try to say, well, I am on the SAG-AFTRA board. I'm not an idiot that I'm going to go play games and make us both look bad.
Right.
So one I read and I got to meet during the strike said she'd read it. And the other, I have a great script supervisor who wants to be part of the film. She's a sweetheart. She worked constantly, and she has somebody in France that she's worked with that said, yes, they'll read the script.
Well, I'll be keeping my fingers crossed for you. So hopefully we will be hearing about one of these movies in the very near future.
And if there's investors out there.
Calling all investors. You've got the websites to get in touch with Marc. So let's hear from you, folks. We need people with those deep pockets who love movies.
Yes.
And so, Mr. Marc Barron, thank you so much for spending a little time in the Sherpa Screening Room.
Well, thank you for having me. It was nice talking with you, Jim.
Be a rebel. Follow the show at Sherpa-lution on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Thanks so very much for listening to the Sherpa Screening Room, and thanks so very much to Mr. Marc Barron for swinging by for a little chat. And as I mentioned earlier, this is episode 25 of season 12. Why is that such a big deal? You may wonder. Well, those of you who've been hanging around here listening to Too Many Podcasts or the Sherpa Screening Room know that after episode 25, we do a little wrap on the season, and a little wrap-up episode will be coming your way next week. We will be giving thanks to all the folks who made an appearance this season, as well as some Sherpa samples. And not only that, Rebels of the Sherpa-lution, we're going to have an announcement regarding season 13. You're going to be seeing something a little different in the upcoming season. I will just leave it at that. We have to build a little suspense, I guess. Is the show going off the air? No, it's not. You can't get rid of me that easy, I promise you. But until then, Lord Mr. Bruce and I will be heading on out of here, and we hope that you'll be spending time with us next week for the season 12 wrap-up. And until then, I say to you, Viva La Sherpa-lution.
Thanks for listening to the Sherpa Screening Room. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast. I'm Mr. Bruce, and this has been a Sherpa-lu Studios production. Viva La Sherpa-lution.